Hi, I'm Anna Saxton. I am a student at the University of Mount Union. I am majoring in mathematics, and my minor is in adolescent to young adult education, which is why I'm here today to talk to you about inclusive education. So kind of what we're going to be talking about is what inclusive education is, and my personal experiences on the field and back when I was in grade school in inclusive classrooms. So, inclusive education, as defined by Dr. Webler in our Intervention Specialist ISP 220 class, is when you have a general education teacher and an intervention specialist, and they're co-teaching the same class, and the students in the classroom are all very different. They have different skill levels. You can have students that are gifted to students that need a lot of help. There are students with disabilities. So it's really a random selection of kids. So back when I was in 5th grade, I was actually placed into an inclusive education room, and I would have never known. All I knew is that there was 2 teachers, and they were very helpful, and I got along, and it was just a regular English class to me. So through my field placement, I was placed in Minerva High School, and first I started in the science department with the head of the intervention specialist department, and then I was not placed in the math inclusion because there was currently a student doing his preclinicals, but luckily he was going the days that I wasn't, and I was there the days that he wasn't there. So the teacher was very welcoming and allowed me to come to her classroom on the days he wasn't there. So kind of the whole gist of Minerva High School is they have a few different programs. They have an IXL, which is their online homework, and it's very rewarding because students can do homework anywhere they have Wi-Fi. The only con to it is that it's very specific with its answers. Like one student answered y equals 3/4 x plus 0, and the fact that there was that plus 0 in there is not all the way simplified, and the student got it wrong, and that significantly decreases their grade, and the teacher can't go back and edit that. But that's the only con. Other than that, it's actually been proved to increase their overall air testing scores, which is a benefit. So my first day teaching, I met with Mrs. Davis, who was the head of the intervention specialist department, and I was able to observe a professional learning community, which are their PLCs. So the intervention specialists will meet twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, and it's really cool because they got to talk about accommodations for ACTs, and what I observed was most of the time they're talking about, are these students meeting their goals and their IEPs, which we'll talk about at a later time. But so certain intervention specialists, they have a caseload, and they have certain students that they will not see throughout the day because they're in other classrooms. So it's really a good time for all the intervention specialists to really talk about, are these students improving, are they flatlining, what's going on. So it's very beneficial in the PLCs. So kind of what I talked about earlier, an IEP is an individualized education program, which is as defined by Dr. Jan Webler in our ISP 220 class. It's a legal written document that is formed by and assessed by a group of people, which include a special education teacher, the parent, an administrator, the general education teacher, an evaluator, a student, and other people, like a school psychologist, and they test these students, figure out what disability they have and what certain accommodations they're going to need. So this math inclusion setup that I was in involved every class that I observed. I observed a geometry class, an Algebra 2A and Algebra 2B class, and Algebra 1 class. So each class that I observed in Mrs. Wood's math inclusion class had about anywhere from 10 to 15 IEPs in every class. So her geometry class was mostly sophomores, and her Algebra 2A and B class was very unique because originally they were 2 separate classes, but since we talked about earlier with the Leo period, Mrs. Woods had to set aside a period for her Leo because, as a side note, her students did not trust any other teacher to teach them math, even though they are very capable of doing so, but a student that was required to go to Leo period wouldn't go unless Mrs. Woods was teaching it. So Mrs. Woods had to set aside a period for Leo, so she had to condense something. So she condensed Algebra 2, A and B. And the problem with Algebra 2, the students in that class, is that they were not on track to graduate high school. It all depended on their air test. So Mrs. Woods kind of designed the whole course to help them with the math portion of the air testing. So how she set up that classroom was she had Algebra 2B in the front of the classroom and Algebra 2A in the back, and they'd be working on their homework because Mrs. Woods said that if she doesn't allot time for them to do homework, then they won't do it. And then halfway through the class they would switch. So Algebra 2A would go to the front and Algebra 2B would sit in the back and work on their homework. And the intervention specialist was also there to co-teach and assist with any student that had a homework question. So overall, my experiences growing up and teaching, it really helps develop my career as a professional, and it helps you really step back, because when I was working on my methods, I was in an Algebra 2 honors class and wasn't really exposed to the IEP. So being able to take this class, it really helps develop my professional career. So thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, please ask.